Hello everybody, this is Jansource here. We focus on budget Magic the Gathering, and I am bringing you a Runo Stromkirk budget deck here. So Runo Stromkirk is a 1/4 vampire cleric with flying for 1 and Dimir. When Runo Stromkirk enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to the top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that. If a creature card with a mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Runo. And on the flip side, Runo turns into Krothuss, Lord of the Deep. Which is a 3/5 Kraken horror with flying. And whenever Krothuss, Lord of the Deep, attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. So Runo / Krothuss have many different ways you can build this. This is primarily going to be kind of a Leviathan, Kraken tribal. You could build it in a way where you get advantage from Runo's ability by blinking him consistently. I am, however, not going in this direction, as I feel like you can thin yourself out. So this is a more focused way, built mostly around Krothuss instead of around Runo. I just want to quickly point that out here. All right, I'm very excited for this. I love something that can get us a massive amount of advantage, and I believe Krothuss is a very good way of doing that. First, we're going to start out by rocking out. We got Charcoal Diamond, enters tapped. You can tap it for a black. Sky Diamond, same thing, but it taps for a blue. Then we have Midnight Clock. I love Midnight Clock. It is a 2 and a blue artifact. It can tap and add a blue, or you can pay 2 and a blue and put an hour counter on it. But at the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour of counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand into your graveyard, and your graveyard into your library, and then you draw 7 cards, and then you exile Midnight Clock. 90% of the time, you are going to be happy with this, just because your fresh 7 cards is usually going to put you in a better spot so far into the game than whatever you had. And then we have Heraldic Banner for 3 generic. As Heraldic Banner enters the battlefield, you choose a color. We're going to be choosing blue 99% of the time. You can choose black, but you will be missing out on the little bit of extra oomph that most of our creatures have. But it can tap for black if you really, really need it to. And now we're going to continue into our Dimir. So we have Dimir Cluestone, 3 generic. You can tap and add either a blue or a black to your mana pool. You can also sacrifice it to draw a card. With how mana heavy some of our creatures are, I would really recommend not doing this, but I can see it going on into the late game where drawing an extra card or 2 might become an advantage. Next is Dimir Locket. Taps to add either a blue or a black, and this time you have to pay double the cost of the Cluestone, but at least you get 2 cards instead. Now this one I want to definitely pay attention to. Dimir Keyrune, 3 CMC, taps, adds a blue or a black, but for a blue and a black, Dimir Keyrune becomes a horror 2/2 blue black artifact creature until end of turn that can't be blocked. So if you have Krothuss on and you are attacking with Krothuss and you are attacking with your Dimir Keyrune, as long as no one removes this, you can copy your Dimir key rune and make a token of it, therefore giving you more ramp. I just really want to preface this because you can start getting 2, 3, maybe 4 key runes and just provide you with an absurd amount of ramp to get to our large payoff cards later on. I just want to really, really point that out. Just do not discount how valuable it is to get 1 or 2 tokens of this key rune out. And for some of our other ramp, we have Farfinder. It is a 1/1 fox with vigilance. Whenever Farfinder enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Merfolk Wayfinder is 2 and a blue. It's a 1/2 Merfolk Scout with flying, and whenever Merfolk Wayfinder enters the battlefield, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all island cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Pilgrim's Eye for 3 CMC. You get a 1/1 Thopter with flying. When Pilgrim's Eye enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And then Skittering Surveyor for 3 generic gets you a 1/2 construct that enters the battlefield, searches your library for a basic land card, and puts it into your hand. Alright, so I have these as creatures and our rocks are going to be our only sources of ramp here. And the reason for that is because if needed be, you can attack with Krothuss and your Farfinder or your Merfolk Wayfinder, Pilgrim's Eye, or Skittering Surveyor to get an extra land draw if you really, really need it. Plus, knowing my experience for playing very big creature decks, having low to the ground creatures that you can pump out at the very beginning to keep people from just taking you out of the game before you get to play your big fun creatures is not a very fun way of playing Commander. So this will help you in that sense, at least help you get through the early game and hopefully provide you with the needed ramp and guaranteed land drops to actually get to your big payoff. Okay, so got a little bit more ramp. I got Skullport Merchant, 2 and a black. When Skullport Merchant enters the battlefield, create a treasure token, and then you can sacrifice another creature or treasure to draw a card. You can use this a little bit of a niche way, get more treasure tokens by attacking, get more card draw by if you know that something that you're attacking with is going to die, but you want to at least get the token, you can pay 1 a black and at least get a card draw off the one that's going to die. Solemn Simulacrum, 4 generic. It enters the battlefield. You search your library for a basic land card, and then you can put it onto the battlefield. When Solemn Simulacrum, sorry about that, guys, dies, you may draw a card. Again, just very, very good card. Dark Ritual. I normally do not like putting ritual cards into my decks, but since we do have such a low CMC commander, but all of our really, really big cards are later in the or have a much higher CMC, I am kind of a really big fan of getting a Dark Ritual out, putting out one of our big Leviathans, making a token copy of it, and just propelling us. Like, that game plan right there can instantly make us like from the least threat to the biggest threat with just 1 Dark Ritual. Peregrine Drake, this is one of the more expensive cards in this deck. It is a 2/3 Drake with flying, but the important part is whenever Peregrine Drake enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands. If you attack with this and Krothuss, you get an extra 5 mana that you didn't have before. It is a very, very fun way, and semi-unique way to get a massive amount of ramp out of this deck. Cloudkin Seer, 2 and a blue, and it has whenever Cloudkin Seer enters the battlefield, draw a card. Curiosity Crafter, you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. We're going to be pumping out at least, hopefully, 1 creature token per turn, so we should have a really good amount of creature tokens by the end of this. Cumina's Awakening, 2 blue enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing instead, only you draw a card. We should be hitting our City's Blessing fairly quick in this deck. We have plenty of rocks, we have plenty of tokens, we have plenty of creatures, so it really shouldn't be a problem hitting that City's Blessing very early on. So most of the time we should be the only ones drawing a card off of this. Sea Dasher Octopus, it has Mutate for 1 and a blue with Flash, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I would like to point out that if you put this over top of one of the other creatures who are not octopuses, leviathans, serpents, and krakens, you can at least start making tokens of this and then potentially giving you more card draw. And let's say on Curiosity Crafter, giving you another source of the no maximum hand size and of its ability, if that makes sense. So this is a very, it looks kind of underwhelming, but the fact that you can create tokens of whatever it mutated onto adds a lot of potential for this card that I don't think a whole lot of opponents will realize at first. Sig, River Cutthroat, Dimir. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, you may draw a card. So obviously this does not just mean our end step, it's every end step. More than likely an opponent is going to be losing 3 life as long as they're not attacking you. So this should be getting us a card draw at least fairly frequently, and hopefully at two card draws per round at the table is what we're aiming for on that one. Tome Raider, 2 and a blue. When Tome Raider enters the battlefield, draw a card. This is hopefully just another option. If you really need a card draw, you can attack with this and Krothuss and get a card draw. Honestly, it's not too terribly great, but if it is here if you need it. Brainstorm, draw 3 cards, then put 2 from your hand on top of your library in any order. This is actually very important with this deck, because if you have Runo on the field instead of Krothuss, you can play Brainstorm, put this big Kraken or Leviathan on the top of your deck, and that way you don't have to wait for an entire 2 turns to actually flip Krothuss. So this is a very important card, and the next one is also an important card, Careful Study. For 1 blue, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand. This provides you pretty much the same way, except it can ditch some of your bigger creatures for Runo to get back and put onto your library for him to flip. It's a little bit slower than Brainstorm, but it is another option. Alright, well, let's get into our big meaty boys. We got some Leviathans to talk about. Brenlin the Moonkraken, 6 blue. Whenever Brenlin the Moonkraken enters the battlefield, or whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater, you may return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So hopefully you can get all of the larger creatures that your opponent has off the field, or maybe a few flyers, and then make either token copy of this or one of your other big beefy boys with Krothuss. And if you can get multiple big creatures onto the battlefield, it can be very, very game changing with this card. Deep Sea Kraken, 7 blue, blue, blue. Deep Sea Kraken can't be blocked, but it has suspend 9, but for 2 and a blue. But whenever an opponent casts a spell, if Deep Sea Kraken is suspended, remove a time counter from it. So once it's suspended, it's game over. This card is going to come out, and the opponents really don't have a way to negate this. So if you play this, it will disincentivize your opponents for wanting to play spells, because the more that they play, obviously, the sooner this behemoth comes onto the field. And this is a very, very fun card. I love having this card in my opening hand, just because I know that I'm going to be having a 6/6 on the field pretty much instantly. Garuda, Doom of Depths, 4 Dimir. When Garuda enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from among those cards onto the battlefield under your control. So a majority of our cards, of our big Leviathans at least, are even CMC. And what's awesome about this is, like, due to how the legend rule is worded, you do get the enter the battlefield triggers off of tokens. So you attack with Krothuss and Garuda, put on another Garuda, you get the trigger again, and you get another free either giant creature or whatever's the best card that your opponent has. Honestly, it's a very, very mean combo. And then next we have Icebreaker Kraken. This spell costs 1 less for each snow land you control. When Icebreaker Kraken enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during that player's next untap step. And then you can return 3 snow lands you control to their owner's hands. Return Icebreaker Kraken to its owner's hand. So there's a lot to unpack here. I do not have any snow lands in this deck. That would be one way to upgrade. It's just that adding snow lands, if your store doesn't have a bunch of them laying around from Kaldheim being released, can easily increase the cost of this deck by like $10 roughly. But what you can do, Commander is mostly a casual format. You can go ahead and ask if you treated each of your basic lands as a basic snow land, then I'm sure most people would be okay with it, especially if they know that it's really just for this one card. It's a 1% chance that this comes up in the game or per draw, so most people will probably be fine with it. But I just want to throw that out there. I know Icebreaker Kraken is a very expensive mana-wise card, but if you can get multiple Icebreaker Krakens off of Krothuss, it's game-changing, and this can easily be a win con for you, just having this one card come out at least 4 turns sooner. Alright, we're moving on with some more Leviathans. We got Inkwell Leviathan, 7 blue blue, Trample, Island Walk, and Shroud. So, a huge creature, can't be blocked by anyone who has an island, and has Shroud, so it can't be targeted by spells and abilities. Just a big old beat stick to finish the game. Lochmere Serpent for blue-black with Flash. Blue, you sacrifice an island. Lochmere Serpent can't be blocked this turn. Black, sacrifice a swamp, you gain 1 life, draw a card, and then you can pay blue-black, exile 5 target cards from an opponent's graveyard, return Lochmere Serpent from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. Graveyard Hate is always great to have in a commander game. I shouldn't really have to say that, but and you won't really want to be copying this too much because it just doesn't give you too much intrinsic value for entering the battlefield. But it does have a few other little options. It can technically finish the game by becoming unblockable. It can give you card draw if you really, really need it. But it's mostly just here for flavor and the Graveyard Hate, to be honest with you. Mesmerizing Benthid is a octopus. Whenever Mesmerizing enters the battlefield, create 2/0/2 blue illusion creature tokens whenever this creature blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and then it also has hexproof for as long as you control an illusion. So if you blink this once or twice, you're going to get a lot of blockers. People are not going to want to be attacking you. Not only do you have big beefy beat sticks, but now you have creatures who just lock them out of their potentially their best creatures. So it's not really worth it for them to go on the offensive with you. And then the next one we got Nadir Kraken. It is a Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. This just widens our board. That's really mostly what it's here for. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of extra mana laying around since we do have so many basic land fetches and mana rocks. Hopefully this comes through a few times, and you can get multiple creature tokens out with this. Again, with Krothuss, I just have to reiterate that. Okay, Nemesis of Reason is a Leviathan horror. Whenever Nemesis of Reason attacks, defending player puts the top 10 cards of his library into his or her graveyard. The only thing that slightly stinks about Nemesis of Reason is that you do not get that attacks trigger off of the token since it comes into the battlefield attacking. That being said, getting multiple creatures to start milling 10 to 20 cards off of a person's library can quickly take him out of a game. And it's just a big old beefy boy. Scourge of Fleets, 5 blue. Whenever Scourge of Fleets enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponent controls with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So this is an amazing target for Krothuss. If you happen to hit your Scourge of Fleets, potentially all of your opponent's blockers could be in their hand and give you a free swing for literally everything. And you can do this repeatedly on every turn. This can legitimately just take out certain decks just on this card alone with Krothuss. And then something to help with that is Serpent of the Yawning Depths. 4 blue, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents you control can't be blocked except by Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So, this is probably the most expensive card in the deck. I'm fairly certain of that. I believe this is a $4 card, roughly. But it is absolutely amazing in this deck. It just lets you swing with Reckless Abandon because most people aren't going to be playing these big sea monsters, and it just lets everything just pretty much have island walk. And then Slyn Voda, the Rising Deep, has Kicker for 1 and a blue, and then when Slyn enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for merfolk, krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. So, The only downside of Slin is that you can't really pay a kicker cost off of a token appearing on the battlefield. If it was worded slightly differently to where, like, if this enters the battlefield and then you pay this, it would. But sadly, it does not. But at least it does give you another chance to do a board wipe on the field, and this can be a finisher on its own if needed be. Hopefully between these few targets, between Slin and Scourge of Fleets, you'll have enough bouncing effects or mass bounce effects that you should close out the game fairly quickly. Spawning Kraken. Whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. Whew. So, this is also another great target for Krothuss to make a token of, because once you start getting multiple 9/9 creature tokens, the game's going to end very, very shortly. It is kind of risky attacking this or swinging this into someone, as you know, it's only a 6/6. Granted, that's a pretty big creature, but enough chump blockers is going to take out this valuable creature, so just be careful of that. Stormtide Leviathan. For 5 blue, has Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to their types. Creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. This pretty much gives you a free pass for the entire game. And making it so that all islands have all lands are islands as well makes the Island Walk very relevant on some of these other creatures. It just, again, just another easy way to become unblockable. Tidal Kraken. Tidal Kraken is unblockable. Just sweet, easy beat stick. And then Trench Behemoth. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. Untap Trench Behemoth. It gains hexproof until end of turn. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent control attacks during its next controller's combat phase if able. So, not only does it have built-in protection by just returning a land, that returning a land also gives you a huge advantage by pretty much goading a very, very important creature that you're, like a utility creature that your opponent really wants to keep around. Again, most of these Leviathans and Krakens and Octopuses are a very, very, very good target for Krothuss. That's obviously what I built a majority of this deck around. A lot of these big boys do have pretty good enter the battlefield triggers, and that's what I have built this deck around. But we have a few more utility creatures. Even though we don't get 2 tokens, it is still sometimes beneficial to target something like Filigree Familiar to get a little bit more advantage off of it. Filigree Familiar enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. That's not the important part. When it dies, however, you draw a card. If you really, really, really need card draw, you can attack with this and Krothuss, hopefully get one of them to die and draw a card. More importantly is Trophy Mage, 2 and a blue. When Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a artifact with converted mana cost 3, reveal it, put it into your hand. If you noticed, a majority of our mana rocks are 3 CMC. Midnight Clock is a 3 CMC card. Technically, Filigree Familiar is a 3 CMC card. And even most of our fetch land creatures are also 3 CMC, and most of them are also artifacts as well. So, the Trophy Mage just gives you a lot of options to just keep making tokens off of her, and hopefully just keep getting realistically absurd advantage for just attacking with a 2/2. Amphin Mutineer. When Amphin Mutineer enters the battlefield, exile up to one target non-salamander creature. That creature's controller creates a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token, and it does have Encore. So if you attack with this, you can exile really anything that's on the field that's really going to give you problems with your big creatures. Like, let's say something gives the entire team death touch. You don't really want to be losing all your big beefy boys to 1/1s with death touch. Hopefully this can get rid of that lord effect and let you go through. And the fact that you can honestly repeat it is a very awesome. So the thing I want to point out is that at the beginning of the next end step, you have to sacrifice all those creature tokens, but from the Encore effect. But with Krothuss, if you choose one of those tokens, you can then get another Amphin Mutineer that should not have to be sacrificed by the end of the turn. So that's something to keep in mind, and that can kind of give you a little bit more advantage with Amphin Mutineer. Archaeomancer. It enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. We do not have that many instants or sorcery spells in our deck, but the ones that we do are pretty key. They're counter spells and removal spells for a majority of them. So Archaeomancer can be a very great utility target as well for Krothuss. Hostage Taker. When Hostage Taker enters the battlefield, exile another target creature or artifact until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield. You may cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Just a removal effect, really, and one that we can possibly repeat. Mind Flayer. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. Oh, that's a just steal the best creature on the board, and then if another better creature comes along, you can target that and temporarily take out their best blocker for a final alpha strike. Ravenous Chupacabra. When Ravenous Chupacabra enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Again, just pop their best blocker that they have, and they're going to be in trouble. Reaper of Sheoldred. It has Infect. Whenever a source deals damage to Reaper of Sheoldred, that source's controller gets a poison counter. A lot of people are not a fan of Infect, so you may want to take this card out. I do believe it is a very good target for it. Yes, it doesn't give you inherent value from coming into the battlefield, but the fact that you're getting multiple tokens that they either let this pass, kill it with a removal spell, or block it, and each one of those there's much more stuff they'd rather be doing. Number one, getting 2 to 4 infect or poison counters. They're not going to last very long, and then when they do finally decide to block it, it's still going to give them poison counters. So it's a very, very good card to do the token strategy with. Just you might have some problems in your play group if they are not a fan of the infect mechanic. And finally, some of our last little utility creatures. We've got Salvager of Secrets. It's an Archaeomancer. It's really all it is just another Archaeomancer. Just gives us a little bit more card advantage than what we had before. And then I'm going to butcher this. Sepulchral Primordial. It has Intimidate, but more importantly, when Primordial enters the battlefield. For each opponent, you may put up to one target creature from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. An amazing token target. An absolutely amazing token target. Just to get literally the best card that all three of your opponents have targeted another time is absolutely amazing. Definitely would recommend this card as a Krothuss target. Now we're going into our utility cards. First up, we have Disdainful Stroke. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. There's so many game-ending cards that are greater than 4 CMC. Well worth the price of keeping 2 mana up. Engulf the Shore. Return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. Another very sneaky way of doing this, someone has a lot of cards in their hand, but does have a maximum hand size right before they end their turn and before their discard step, obviously. You play this card, return everything that they just spent all their mana on, and then they have to prioritize on what they have to discard. Very mean way of playing the game, especially if you're next and you can take either them or someone else out just with this card alone. Very, very well worth it. Heartless Act, just a very key removal spell. Destroy target creature with no counters, or remove 3 counters from target creature. And then we have Murder, destroy target creature. Price of Fame, this spell costs 2 less if it targets a legendary creature. Destroy target creature, and then Surveil. This is actually a very decent effect in this deck, just because when we do play Rumo, that we can actually return a big creature that we pulled off the top of our deck back onto our library to then flip him next turn. So yes, it does have a little bit of workaround to get it, but it is another way to flip Runo into Krothuss. Tyrant Scorn, 1 and a black, destroy target creature with converted mana cost, or return target creature to its owner's hand. Just another thing to give us options. Unwind, 2 and a blue, counter target non-creature spell, untap up to 3 lands. This is, I don't want to say a free counter spell, but it does help out very much, just having the ability to protect whatever you're doing or ending someone's really game-winning combo. Curse of the Swine, love this removal piece. Exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a 2/2 green boar creature token on the battlefield. I love this removal card. You will see this in a lot of my decks coming forward. Just get rid of a massive amount of cards that are causing you problems, whether it's their best blockers or utility creatures or even their commander. Just a massive spell, especially with how many, again, lands and how much mana we're going to have access to. This can be another game-winning card, even though it may not look like it. Gust of Wind, this spell costs 2 less if you control a creature with flying. We do have a few flying creatures, and one of them is our commander. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and then you draw a card. Raven Form. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. And then you can foretell it and then only have to pay 1. Whelming Wave, 2 blue, return all creatures to their owner's hands except krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. And guess what? All of our most of our creatures are. And then 1 land. I usually do not put lands in the actual deck tag, but one I really did want to showcase here is Mortuary Mire. It enters the battlefield tapped, which is a little bit sad and is technically not a swamp. But whenever Mortuary Mire enters the battlefield, you may put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library and tap to add black. So again, this is just a very helpful utility piece to either re-get a utility creature that we really need for the moment, or more likely to flip Runo into Krothuss by putting a huge beefy sea monster on the top of our deck. Alright, so value from Card Kingdom, $49.87. That is with shipping. That is very reasonable for this deck. There are a few I believe was a $4 to $5 card in that. So for one card having 10% of our budget, I feel like this is a very, very good, concise deck built around sea monsters. The value for TCG player without shipping is $32.92. I know that TCG player does have the cart optimizer, so that can help your shipping costs, obviously. I know that sometimes during the big commander decks, this can be a problem with the load time. And then, so the average cost of a Runo Stromkirk deck is kind of unknown at the moment. It's a little bit disappointing. I would really be interested to seeing how much of a percentage our deck is compared to our someone else's, because I really do feel like this is a very competitive deck for only $50. And sadly, there isn't a whole lot of lore. I'm actually a little bit disappointed. Hopefully, once the set comes out a little bit more, we'll probably get a little bit more. But as of right now, it's just a little bit disappointing. All we know is that Runo is the progenitor of the Strommkirk line. That means he's the first one. Those type of vampires actually have very strong illusion magic. And then Runo is the high priestess of the cult of Krothuss. Again, there's literally nothing that we know about Krothuss at the moment. Again, that's really disappointing, because I do absolutely love this art style. I absolutely love playing big creatures and not a green deck. So this deck is just right up my alley. I love it so much, and it's just a little bit disappointing that as of right now, we just don't know that much about Runo. So there's our deck tech, guys. Like I said, I'm super proud of this. This is one deck I would consider blinging out. I'm not a fan of the other showcase card, but I do absolutely love this art style that's in this particular showcase card. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I definitely appreciate everything that you guys do. I'm sorry this one took so long. I had a little bit of a cold, and I know my audio quality isn't the best to begin with, so why make it worse? Again, thank you for all your support. Please leave a like or comment down below. I do look at all those throughout the day or throughout the week, and if you have any critiques or criticisms, I am more than happy to hear from it. And thank you guys so much.